It's nice to know other artists are dealing with a lot of the same things that I deal with, just in terms of trying to, just to make a living. When I'm painting, I have TV on the entire time. Now, a lot of artists think that that's just completely why don't you listen to music? And it's like, because TV occupies my mind. I just keep the TV on, keeps my mind occupied, and when I'm binging something, I will stay in my seat because I want to see the next episode. Right now, I'm watching Father Brown. I love any British murder mystery. I'm doing pet portraits, mostly. And this one right now is, I just started this. This is my friend Mark Shasha and his wife Danuta, and their golden retriever, Sandy. Right now I'm in the I hate this painting stage, which is every painting. I hate every painting at some point, and then I love it. It's part of the pet series that I'm doing. When I say that I hate a painting at some point, there's things that are structurally wrong with it. And so like when I first roughed these in, I had used two different poses or two different photographs. I liked her pose in one painting, I liked his pose in another photograph. And actually, the dog isn't even there. The dog, because the dog is no longer with us, the post-mortem pet portrait, I went online and got a basic golden retriever that I like the pose of, and I will put their dog's face on the dog eventually, but they didn't have a photograph with the dog in a pose that I could use. So the hate part is, all right, last night I painted in these clouds, and I did the whole sky before this tree was here. And I really liked everything at one point. Once I started with the tree, again, this is all in layers, so this isn't definite yet, this is just thinking. See this line here? And you see this line here? So this painting is a bunch of stripes, and I wake up this morning and I come and I see, there's a line here, there's a line with this all the way across, there's this, and it kind of leads over to there. So that's it's not right. So eventually I will go back and move all this around, and eventually there'll be more leaves coming in, and when I start bringing up the different layers and highlighting different, where the sun's hitting it and stuff, then I will start to like it again. I've been painting animals in my paintings for a long time. I had a whole series called The Carpenter Dreams, and it featured tools with birds or other animals, because I was working in home construction for Jack Piccirillo. I did all the work you wouldn't pay a real carpenter to do. I could hang a mailbox, and I could take all the tile off of the wall of a bathroom that's being redone. Stuff like that. Go to the junkyard, go to the lumber yard, pick up all the lumber, drop it off at everybody's house. So I was surrounded by it. My father was a contractor, so the sound of saws is very comforting to me. So I started making paintings based on my experiences on the job. And there'd be I had a level with a bunch of birds all lined up on it. And people like the paintings, but nobody wants a painting of an electric saw. No matter how beautiful the bird is. So I had this this gallery director one time say to me, Patty Williams, she says, Alicia, can't you just paint the birds and skip the tools? And I was really offended, because my paintings were about what I was thinking, with my tools, because I love tools. But 10 years later, I finally, when I realized I have to sell something eventually, I said, well, what animals will they buy? And they will buy their pets. So I started doing pets. It's turned into a nice little business for me. This is my pet, Buddy, and he has to be featured. He was out all night, and he's a bum, but he's a friendly bum. And one of my first pet portraits was of Buddy. This was a statue of Julius Caesar that I had seen at the Met in New York City at Christmas time. This is Murphy. This is a cat that is from another portrait that I had done. And this was a pose that the woman had sent me as a joke. And she said, haha, that's Murphy. And I was like, can I use it? And she goes, oh, no, we don't want to do a portrait like that. And I was like, but can I make a painting of my own? Because I'm going to put this in the Arts Festival here in Marblehead. I mean, that's hilarious. That is such a cat. When you don't want him to do that, he's just being obnoxious. People say, what is your process? And I say, I don't paint, I repaint. I just keep painting until I like it. And that's one of the reasons I work in acrylics as opposed to oil, because I don't have the time and or patience for something to dry before I can continue to work on it. There's a certain element of the hand-painted image, however, that is different from the photograph. The photograph tends to flatten things out, especially these. I mean, these are simple photographs taken, you know, with people's iPhones and stuff like that. So what I bring to it as an artist is I do know the effect of how the light is going to, you know, lighten things up, or, you know, how it is going to brighten an edge. And I mean, as you can see, I've completely changed where, you know, like this was on a light thing, so I have this dark here, and if the light was hitting it, and how it would really bring these little furs up. And so that's what, you know, that hand-painted element is what makes it look like, oh my God, it's almost lifelike. Whereas if they're looking at a photograph, it is a photograph, it's two-dimensional and it's flat. But there's something, I don't know, it's just, there's something organic about the hand-painted item. And I have these like little brushes, like I never throw my brushes out, because the more worn out they are, the better they become. Like here's a beautiful brand new brush. And then this one is the same brush, but it's all worn out. As you can see, the whole tops are all worn out. And this one's even more worn out. But these are perfect for making little furs, because it's all these rough ends. And when you dip it into the paint and you slightly brush it onto the surface, you can bring all those tiny little furs up. So and then what will happen eventually is once I get that furry texture, then I go in with the one hair brush. It's not really one hair, but that's what I call it. Where are you? This one's my favorite. And then I'll just pick up just a few places and bring that up. Just like there, and there, and there. I have two series. I have the pet series and things like that I do. But I also have, what I've had that are very popular, and one of the ways I make my living is making what I call the Paint Girl Square. And they're simple, fun paintings that I get these boards out of the boat yards. They are used to hold the boat jacks up, to keep them from falling in the mud. You can see like all these like little dents in the wood, and basically what they do is they put this in the ground, and it keeps the big pole from sinking into the mud. When they put the boats all back in the water, I go around and collect these. My friend George, who's a carpenter contractor, he'll give me brand new scraps of wood already cut into squares. I give them brand new ones. I collect these. It's a kind of a nice trade for them. They get new ones that aren't worn out. The more worn out the board, the more interesting the painting. So I just all of a sudden, like right now I'm doing condiments, and I got really into these condiments. I had seen, it's sort of like this pop art thing that I've just started getting into. And this morning I woke up and I was looking, because I just started this Grey Poupon one. And I was like, what else? And I was like, you got to do a honey bear. So this is going to be the next one. I draw the images on, and then I start just putting the layers of paint on, because I like to give it that look. What I like about them, this one in particular, you remember when we had the Coca-Cola sign on the side of Tony's Pizza? I mean, that was beautiful. It was worn off. You could still see the Coca-Cola. There was a certain wear to it. That's what these paintings remind me of. It's sort of like old signs that are slowly wearing down. Some of them are really simple, like this sun. The suns are always popular. I will always sell suns. Everybody wants a sun. James has one. Last year I was doing Star Wars, and that was fun. You know, everybody wants a Millennium Falcon. That's a really cool image people will buy. So I think of pop images, but I also, I get into things, and I just got into these condiments. I love condiments. My basic day is watching a murder mystery. I sit and watch the murder mysteries, or I listen to them, especially, you know, like if you're watching Law and Order, you know all the characters and you know their voices, so you don't even have to look up. And I traced all the letters on this with an X-Acto knife. Just traced it, and then I just transferred them onto there. So now I'm painting this, and just letter it, and eventually it's going to be this great painting that somebody's going to want to buy. Because everybody, it's funny, because like some of them I'm like, oh, I kind of just painted that one for myself. but people identify with the different things, and it's always amusing to see what people, respond to. Sometimes I think, oh, everybody's going to love this. And I'll hold on to it for I made a zebra last year that was gorgeous, and I have yet to sell it. And I'm thinking, this painting is gorgeous, but you never know. And then they buy one that you're like, oh, I'm glad that one's gone. I hated that one. I don't like to use my really expensive paint. I don't even like to use my good brushes. A good brush that's expensive wears out just as fast as a cheap brush. So I would rather buy a bunch of cheap brushes and always have some fresh ones on hand than spend a lot of money on, a beautiful sable brush or something like that is going to wear out just as fast, especially when I'm painting on these boards. The boards are rough and they just wear the brushes out. So usually I only do these with like my really trashed brushes, except for like what I like to call going in for the kill. And when I start putting in those real fine details, then I'll pull out a brush that costs me $10. Certain paints, no matter what brand you get, are the best. But then I find out that sometimes I like the cheap one. Like this white I use for everything. When I go in for the kill, then I pull out my Liquitex, because then that one's going to be a beautiful bright white. My training is, I went to Moore College of Art in Philadelphia. It's a women's art college. I'm pretty sure it's probably the only women's art college in existence. And I was actually a sculpture major because I had wanted to be a toy designer. I don't know if you can tell just by looking at my work, but I have a certain amount of whimsy and childish sensibility to just about everything that I approach. Everybody likes to have a painting that they can hang on the wall. It's out of the way, but you got a bunch of sculptures in storage, and what the hell do you do with those damn things? So eventually, just to make art, I started painting, and when I was young, when I was about 7th grade, I had this, my mother sent me off to this lady's house, Mrs. Bowers, Rosemary Bowers. And, it was like that Aunt Minnie type that made these beautiful paintings of, just sunsets and covered bridges and stuff, how to mix color and stuff. So although maybe the aesthetic value wasn't really fine art, I really did learn a lot about just how to manipulate paint. When I started painting, I was about 30 or so. All that stuff started to come back to me. I'm a much better painter than I was, 10 years ago, that's for sure. Because as time goes by and, out of necessity, out of necessity and practice, you become a better painter. I really wanted to make things like the great masters. It's tricky to do that with a sense of humor. As I've done more art research and go to museums and going to Paris, I think it was just the Museum of Hunting. And they had all these great taxidermy. The French love their taxidermy. There was this one great painting of these cats in a huge fight. And these were painted in the most, I wish I knew enough about art history to tell you the name of the styles that they were painting in, but trust me, these were like beautiful paintings, but they had a sense of humor. I've seen paintings of the Last Supper with dogs under the table arguing over a scrap of food. I mean, that's a pretty serious subject matter, but the artist had enough sense of humor to put dogs under the table fighting over scraps of food. So I started to realize it is possible to do this and still, leave my whimsy intact. So some of the paintings that I do have that, most of the paintings that I do for myself have that sense of humor. My father used to yell at me and say, Alicia, not everything is funny. And like I'd be like, oh yeah, you gotta, straighten up. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at it the right way, everything is funny. Everything in the right time and place is humorous. I think it's pretty funny that I'm painting a picture of mustard on a piece of old wood and somebody's going to buy it. That's hilarious. But and my coloration, like everything's bright color. Like one of the problems I'm having with this painting, as much as I want to do this ominous sky and this foreboding coloration that that I'm seeing in these paintings by Thomas Lawrence, is the fact that the colors aren't bright and it's not a sunny day. That's my personality. I'm a sunny day walking down the street most of the time. I guess it comes naturally. Who would choose to do a bottle of ketchup? You have to have a certain sense of humor for something like that. So I make these piles of squares so I can go to the arts festivals and show my work. Now my goal is to sell pet portraits. So I will have my pet portraits on display, and I'll have paintings of, like, I have a bunch of paintings of dogs and things that are available for sale. But when people see like a Doberman, they're like, oh, that looks like ours. Could you paint ours? Yes, I could paint yours. You know, nobody wants to buy someone else's dog. They want to buy their dog. So this is how I make commissions. They come to the festival, they see my work. But nobody comes to the festival to buy, you know, a $700, you know, $2,000 painting. They come to buy, you know, something to take home. So the squares come in handy that way. I have stacks of them. It helps pay the amount of time that I'm there, you know, while I'm standing there. But one of the things that I do to attract a crowd is I dress in costume. I go in these ridiculous outfits, and people want to buy a painting from the paint girl dressed as Marion Brite. I had this character in my mind all along. Her name was Marion Brite. From the song, May Your Days Be Merry and Bright. And I was like, who the hell is Marion Brite? And I was like, I'm Marion Brite. So she dresses in costume. I like to say she's like a broke down pinup girl. It's like she's aged out of the pinup girl system and she's still got her costumes. So like I dress in ridiculous outfits. Sometimes it's a ball gown. Sometimes it's a handmade garment. I have this other thing that I do where we make garments out of recycled materials. And it's a runway show that we do. It's for charity. And so like I'll have, you know, some get up from there, and I'll stand in my tent, and people come and get their picture taken with Marion. They buy a painting from the crazy paint girl. It's sort of like it's like an event. It's like, oh yes, we can't wait to see what you were wearing this year. You know, oh, will you take your picture? And you know, like, and then I make them take pictures. Like I make them take pictures of them holding up the painting to prove to, you know, my family, yes, I am selling paintings. Don't worry. So when my daughter moved out, eventually, you know, what was her room became the guest room. She lives in New York City, and she sells very expensive clothes to very wealthy people, and that's her whole life. But we are all about clothes. Both of us are about clothes. So when she moved out, I turned the big bedroom into Marion's walk-in closet. These are all different things, and some of these things are things that I made. This is my cowgirl outfit that I wore. So stand out there, you know, in my cowgirl outfit and sell paintings, and it brings joy to all the little children. I have a lot of headwear. I made this the year before. I made this this headdress. Now this was inspired by the Aztecs. It's made of shopping bags and that styrofoam that things come packed in, and yeah, I like this. This is a good headpiece. I have more hats than are, you know, like you could, it's my thing. I was invited to a Roaring Twenties party, so I bought this cloche, and then I covered it with the peacock feathers to give it that Roaring Twenties look. I'm all about a classic hat, so I have all the classics. Like I have this hat store in Jamaica Plain called Salmagundi, and I go and buy hats from them all the time. They have the most beautiful hats. I have this derby that I got last fall, and of course then I have to have a top hat. This is more like a dressage hat, which I think, you know, I want a top hat, but I want to go to England and buy an authentic beaver fur top hat like Franklin Roosevelt. I mean, I want a classic. So, but it has to be part of something. It has to have some meaning. But, you know, and then I have, you know, costume hats. Like, you know, I don't really ride, but I look like I could. This one's from India. I do not know if this is intended as a costume or if it was actually an official hat of some sort. So a hat is a good investment as far as I'm concerned, especially when it comes to a costume. I have stacks and stacks of hats, and they might, you know, be similar. Like I would, oh, and by the way, okay, so this is straw, and you would never wear a straw hat before Memorial Day. Oh, look, this is a gorgeous Homburg. These are regular fashion hats. These are less costume and more, you know, fashion. But I don't really distinct between the two. I would not wear this in the middle of winter because it's really warm, and you know, it makes people laugh. And I actually did a rain dance in it. Remember 2 winters where it just snowed and snowed and snowed, and I was like, this has got to stop. So I got some maracas, and I got my medicine man headdress on, and I went out in the backyard, and I did a little snow dance, and then it snowed again. So it didn't really help that much, but I have a hat for just about every occasion. Sometimes people give me hats. They're like, oh, I have this hat that you might want. it's really fun to get a family that really responds to what you're doing, and you make it fun. The festival, you make it fun. I mean, yeah, I could be just standing there saying, oh yeah, this is my work, but it's just not in me. It's in me to entertain on some level. And, oh God, here we go. I was in, we did Spam-A-Lot, and I had to be, I had to be from China, so I got this really cool Chinese hat. Yeah, I was on stage for all of 3 seconds in it, but you know, you have to have the hat. I could be going anywhere. Like I was at a farmer's market, and then I saw this thing. This is awesome. This is a great hat because it's actually functional. It really does keep the sun off of your face, but it also has kind of a cowboy thing going for it, which is always good luck. My whole family is actually in the arts on some level. My little brother is a drummer. My older brother was also a drummer. My sister, Noelle, she's the real theater person. She can sing, she can dance, she's a choreographer, she was classically trained as a ballerina, and tap and jazz, and she does all that stuff. And if in my daydreams, I would be her. I would be out there on stage. If I could sing, I would trade in the brushes, I would give it all up. If I could sing and dance, that would be what I would do. My father was a trained tenor. My mother was a trained musician who taught piano lessons for years, and they met back in the 50s. There was this clubhouse. My mom was part of a German singing group. They just sort of a chorus, and they just sing. My father was part of sort of like a whole circuit of people who entertain, as entertainers do. He was a tenor. He would sing at different events and stuff. Do a little bit of that like kind of vaudeville stuff. And they met at this club. They would have like these big events where they'd have just parties at this clubhouse. And they met over this piano. It was a Chronic and Bach Baby Grand. And that was the piano that was used at this facility. And they met singing over that piano. And eventually when the club closed down, they bought the piano, and it was in our house for years. My mother taught piano on it. So that's kind of a happy story. But yeah, everybody in my family does pretty much music. I'm the only one who went into the visual arts. My father did, papering, painting, carpentry, building cabinets and stuff like that. Like, my goals are not real highbrow. I don't want people to walk away from what I do saying they've been fulfilled on some level, that I've made some amazing statement. If somebody laughs at something that I've done, that's everything to me. It's the approval that I'm looking for. I don't need somebody to say, wow, I really agree with you. That's really a brilliant thought of yours. It's not that everything that everything about me is on the surface and that it's not important. But I think the most important thing for me to do, and that the way that I've gotten through anything that was hard for me in my life, is through humor. I went through this one really bad period where I watched White Christmas so many times, and that was back in the days when it was a video and you had to rewind it. And I would rewind it and I would just start it again. It would be 2 in the morning and I'd be like in tears, and I'd like pop that movie in and I'd watch it one more time. I know that movie inside and out, and it got me out of it. So I know that somewhere humor is the most healing thing for me. It's not like I have some horrible thing that I'm overcoming in my life, but somehow when people laugh with me or at me, I don't care if you're laughing at me, you go ahead and laugh. I got a Pomeranian on my head. I mean, like, that's funny. So like, if you're gonna laugh and you walk away from me and I see a smile on your face, that is really fulfilling for me. That is what I want. It makes me feel better about me. Maybe it's approval that I'm looking for, so be it. It's fulfilling when I have brought lightness to somebody, I guess, on some level. If they're looking at my paintings and they make them happy, well, they made me happy. So then I've shared that with the people or the person viewing or whatever. Some people will look at my stuff and say, that's a bunch of crap and it's not serious and you're not a serious painter. And it's like, okay, but I can live with that. I made somebody cry when she looked at the portrait of the dog I painted. That's heavy. This is actually a portrait of my father. This was his electric saw. It's a gorgeous old craftsman saw. This was part of the whole Carpenter series. My father was a contractor, so my father looked like a blue jay. My father had a long pointy nose, and he had this pompadour that the back end would always like kind of flip up in this crest like on a blue jay. he would always find blue jay feathers in the yard. It was just like this thing. He had a little vase that he would stick them in. And so like from across the room, you would see that thing. It was bright blue. Although this is sort of somber, there's still this sense of humor. Even when I'm doing something serious, I think that my way of looking at things, seeing my father as a blue jay, it comes through as a certain element of whimsy, regardless of the fact that it's a painting of a saw. I was working for this guy on his boat. If you live in Marblehead, you're a painter, at some point you will work on someone's boat. The guy was a jerk. I was really mad at him, and he's a carpenter. And I remembered in the movie Overboard how like the heroine dumps all the carpenter's tools overboard. This is how I am. This is my sense of humor. I'm mad at a guy. I'm so mad I want to throw his tools overboard. And it becomes a painting. And he was like a chiseling bottom feeder. So I made this painting of chisels. Those were the, symbolic of the tools at the bottom of the ocean. Actually, it's at the bottom of a lake because I wanted to put this catfish in there because a catfish is a bottom feeder. We're actually friends now. It's autobiographical. It's about my thoughts about people, and so this is my thought process. And then in selling these things, I think sometimes people, when people buy works of art, they really like to meet the person who's making it. That's what that gives it that more personal connection when they meet the person. And so when they're meeting me and they're talking to me and I'm telling them the joke, I don't know. It just comes out that way, and I think it's my positivity. I'm actually really, I'm really negative in many ways. My presentation of it is always like, I should maybe write for sitcoms or something because I do see the humor in so many like normal things. I am Alicia Irick Cohen. That is my birth name. That is who I am. And then there's the paint girl who does the squares, and I'm that outward personality who talks about my work. And then there's Marion Brite, who is the theatrical one. She's considerably younger than I am. They are distinctly different, and yet they are all the same people. I always say, like, people are like, oh, well, who's Marion Brite? And I said, I tell you what, if you met me and you liked me, you met Marion. If you meet me and you met Alicia, we are not going to be friends. Alicia is incredibly caustic and negative. She has a foul mouth. The paint girl, is a businesswoman, so she has to be nice to people. The most fun one is definitely Marion. Although I felt like I had discovered her like shortly after the theater thing, which was about I guess 8 years ago or so. The truth is that she's been in me all along. She's the person who could cope at a cocktail party and talk to people she doesn't know or care to know. She's the person who was able to wait tables and, strike up a conversation and be friendly to people with miserable children. Marion is just out there and she's friendly and she's sort of like that diner waitress that talks too much. I'm probably more Marion now in this interview just because it's one of those things. I don't want you to have I don't want to come across as really depressing. So it is three distinct people. And, but at the same time, I feel like Marion is the person who kept my glue together. Like when there's things that I have struggled with, Marion will get me through with that positivity of hers on the outside. And then the paint girl, she works so hard. She has more energy, and she, like when I feel worn out and I'm like, I'm just going to take the night off. The paint girl's like, you can sit at the desk, put on another murder mystery. You can get this done. It's due in a couple days. You have no choice. So I would say Alicia is the, she's the person who takes care of her daughter and loves her daughter. And she is the family person, and she's the person who cooks. And cleans the house. The paint girl is the worker and the breadwinner, and a hard worker and honest. And Marion is the one that she just keeps everybody happy and just keeps it going. Just keeps the lights on. She just she's the one that keeps us from sitting. Marion keeps Alicia off the couch because it would be so easy for me to curl up in a ball under a blanket and just watch TV all day. Marion cheers me up, so three distinct people. It's the unholy trinity. I'm not the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. I'm Alicia, the paint girl, and Marion Brite.